Maybe don't know.
This time, it's time to build. This 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 time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 70 of the Power Company podcast. It's almost our 2-year birthday. Just a couple of days, actually. Will be 2 years that we put out our first official episode, not counting the little short intro that everyone has to do to get their podcast on iTunes. Our first real episode, which is with Carlo Traversi, way back when. 2 years ago, to be exact. And that seems insane to me that we've done 70 episodes of this thing. And I've still got 30 or so interviews sitting and waiting to go out. Some that I really want to get out, but if I put them out at the pace that I want to, I'll go through all 30 in the next month, and that'll be no good for the podcast. You guys will be stoked. Won't be so good for me. Anyway, I don't have a whole lot to say. I'm trying to take it easy this winter. We're not traveling a bunch. I'm going to be hanging out here in Lander. I'm going to be training and getting myself back into the shape I want to be in. And I'll be detailing that on a patron-only podcast, the We Scream Like Eagles podcast, that you can get if you become a patron for as little as $1 a month. And that's at patreon.com/Power Company Podcast. I'll be detailing that every couple weeks, what my training is, what my progress is, if I'm falling off the wagon and I'm a dismal failure. Who knows? That could happen. However, with your accountability, I don't think it's going to. So that's all I got today. New stuff coming next year, though, so look out for that. Today, we've got our first route setter on the podcast. And this is something I hope to explore more in the future, because I think route setters obviously play a really, really important role in our training, especially if you train in a commercial gym. And if you are a route setter, it's tough to find the time and the energy to train yourself. So I talked with today's guest. Nate and I sat down with him in St. Louis. Jonathan Brandt, who is the head setter at Climb Nashville. He was in St. Louis setting for the So Ill Showdown, which I MC every year. And we had a really great conversation. And he also wanted me to let you guys know that Climb Nashville has 2 gyms opening in this next year. One in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. How do you say that? Murfreesboro? I don't know. I don't have a Tennessee accent, so I'm probably not saying it correctly. And one in Bentonville, Arkansas. And he's going to be hiring route setters. So any of you out there who want to start a career, you want to change in your career, you want to move to Tennessee or Arkansas, or if you're already there, Jonathan is going to be hiring route setters, and you can get him at jonathan@climbnashville.com, and that's JONATHAN at climbnashville.com. And I'll have a link to that in the show notes, whether you're on your phone or on your computer. You can go look at the blog, whatever. I'll have a link there. And the Climb Nashville's got a really cool comp every year, and if you haven't seen their videos for their comp, it's called the Hotter Than Chicken Bouldering Competition. You should definitely go check those videos out. I'll have those in the show notes too. It's a comp in which you eat Nashville's signature hot chicken in order to multiply your bouldering score, which I think is amazingly fun. And if you have fingers of steel and a stomach of steel, it's the comp for you. They got a big cash purse, so you might be interested in heading out to Climb Nashville next year in July for that comp. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm just excited that we're almost 2 years into this thing, and this is episode 70 with Jonathan Brandt.
Second, you stop being receptive to feedback, or you see yourself as too good to receive it, or maybe you think, oh man, I've got all the tools I need. You're not evolving as a setter, and that's the same kind of ego in route setting that you see in rock climbing that nobody likes seeing around.
This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build
Just like, or just got comfortable, you know, like I was actually like jumping across volumes and stuff. I don't know. I'm always like kind of a bit sour about that kind of style. This does not help my climbing. I don't need it. And then in there, when I was just like, oh, this is all I came for. I came to just like do the shenanigan 1-2 dyno flip boomerang moves, like. And then because that's all I wanted to do, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
You go in expecting that, and there's so much of it. It's fun. Were you solo, or do you have?
It was just me.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, it was cool. But yeah, I could totally see how that would be a rough place to like have as your full-time gym.
Yeah.
Let's just start there, because
Cool.
you know, that's where we're going to start. First off, we're outside, and so you guys are going to hear the wind and the birds and all the cool outside stuff. We thought we'd come out here because Jonathan's normal environment is indoors, so we had to get you a little sun. You're looking a little pale.
I appreciate that. I am pale. See-through almost at this point.
Yeah, transparent. But Nate was just talking about that World Cup comp style setting. You know, talk to me a little bit about your opinions on that, since you're an outdoor climber as well.
Oh yeah, man. Ooh, that's a loaded question, really. You know, as a route setter, I'm pretty plugged into the trends on social media or in gyms or in comps, and it's hard because so many people these days grow up climbing and competing solely in gyms, and they don't ever climb outside.
Yep.
And it almost on one level seems like climbing is becoming this parkour style World Cup boulder setting thing that's fun to watch. But as an avid real rock climber,
Real rock climber.
yeah, it's important for me to kind of maintain the kind of setting that, or the kind of climbing that I really enjoy doing as well, that maintains fitness and strength. And
Yeah.
as the head route setter at a couple of gyms in Nashville, I have to cater to both kinds of clients, which is hard. And certainly I'm not very good at that World Cup style, but it's fun as hell to try to set and to climb on.
Yeah, for sure. Do you ever set routes that are somewhat that style? I'm just curious.
I try sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different, you know. It's one thing to step off the ground into a move that you've kind of created in this World Cup compy style. It's another thing to climb into and out of it.
Halfway up a route, you just run and jump off a bunch of volumes.
And then, you know, you had to add some sort of fear factor when you're creating ledge falls across running jumps and things of that nature. So every once in a while, I'll do some fun stuff, but not too much of the time. People can't really handle that 30 feet up in the air.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that in the gym setting, route climbers can be a little bit more picky than boulderers, and you start throwing too much of that on the walls, you hear about it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I was just talking with Chris earlier, because I've set off and on since 2005, and it's still like, I don't know, it's fun to just pick up every now and then, like go do some part-time work. But we were just talking about some of my favorite comments that I've seen in comment boxes.
Oh man,
do you have any favorites?
Oh man, there's the standard ones: too hard, too reachy, things of that nature.
It's all too reachy.
Oh, always. Every once in a while, you'll get somebody sharing a comment like, "I consistently climb 512 outside, and I can't climb 59 in the gym." It sounds a little extreme, but you know, maybe we're doing something wrong.
That's sort of what happens to me when I go in the gym, though.
And then you get comments that are like, "These are too compy," but then you get the other comment that says, "We want more compy,
Not compy
More
enough.
dynos.
You know, you can't make everybody happy.
Oh,
I heard recently, maybe online on a Facebook page or something, somebody's goal is to make 80% of the clients happy about 80% of the climbs you set. Did I say that right? 80% of the clients happy about 80% of the climbs that you set. Then you've done a good job.
With 80% or with 80 climbs, you've managed to
80%.
please
Is that too much
80%
math?
people?
That's too many
I'm
numbers.
not a
dude.
math guy.
Yeah.
Me
neither.
Maybe just we'll say majority.
Eventually, we want to make everybody happy.
Yeah.
Just not every climb.
Not possible though, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think it's almost a better way to go is to kind of say, okay, like this climb, maybe 3 out of 5 people aren't going to like it, but 2 out of 5 are going to love it. But then you're still going to cover those 3 out of 5 with other climbs.
Yeah, sure.
Because if you try and make everyone happy, then that's just not possible, especially with route setting. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
And if you could just turn it to outdoor climbing, that would be better. I would
I'm working
appreciate
on
that.
it.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
We need retractable domes and problems that just become real boulder problems.
bad conditions.
Yeah, I don't want those. I want outdoor climbing with perfect conditions.
Spaniards that visit and on-site
And change
everything.
the holds when I need to.
I'm from the South, man. I don't think I might give you 30 days a year for that. That's about it. But I have kind of determined that at the root of the majority of comments that come through my comment box is it's all grade related.
Yeah, I believe that. How do you guys rate in your gym?
So we use the V scale for boulders and the Yosemite decimal system for routes. You know, I like it. I think it tracks progression well, and the challenge with it is an authentic grading system that we use on Real Rock, so people draw comparisons. And whenever I have conversations, I try and encourage climbers to use it as a guide.
Yeah,
it's not concrete. But in our smaller bouldering facility, we actually 6 months ago took all grades off the wall. What I was noticing was you got Joe Schmo number 1 trying this V8 boulder that might be easy until like the last move that makes it V8. They go over here for a second and try this V3 they can't do. It's kind of compy or funny. Then they go back to the V8 because it's got a higher number on it. They want the points. And I didn't like how that was kind of destroying a sense of community in a way. Nobody was sessioning together, and they weren't climbing on the boulders or the climbs because they were fun. They were chasing numbers, standard climber stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it myself.
Sure.
So we got rid of grades, and it's been awesome. We tried it on a little section of the wall in the gym just to sample it, and we had such a unanimously positive response. We wiped them out across the gym, and people are psyched. They session together.
That's cool.
They don't care about the grades anymore. We do provide a little guide they can use if they want to check on it. But it's been really good.
Yeah, I think So Ill was just moving to something like that in their route area. And I was going to ask what you thought of it. So
yeah,
that's a really cool idea. And I hadn't thought of the community aspect of it. I think that's cool. Have people session together again.
It's been really rewarding for people in that way. There is a little bit negative feedback, mostly in form of it's harder to warm up. Can't find the easy climbs, but that's not that big of a deal. You look for the jugs or the easier holds.
Yeah, and you can usually pick out what's easier, and you get better at picking out what the grades are, how difficult it looks to you.
We had a comp last week, and we put the grades back on for the comp based on how we formatted it, and multiple members told me, take the grades back down. I don't like the grades being up. I don't know, maybe we sandbagged them a little bit too for the comp. But
yeah, maybe that's another thing. It's easier on people's egos to not be failing on a V3, so they can just convince themselves it's actually V7.
Totally. And I've had many climbers climbing V3 or 5 or whatever saying they're now trying harder things because they're not scared by the number attached to it.
Totally.
It's great.
I like that. Also, if you look at it on the other side too, like going in and just saying, oh, like this looks challenging to me. Like I know I definitely have an ego attached to, if I look at something that I feel like the number's really low, but it looks like I'm going to flail on it, I may go to something that's a little bit harder.
Oh, I'll definitely go to something that
if
looks
I'm going to fall, I'm just going to fall on something with a big number.
If I'm going to flail, it's going to be on something with double digits.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Something nobody else can work on or is working on.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe take my shirt off too to make it look extra hard.
Yeah. Wait, John Gill put this up before I was born, and it gets V2. Yeah, no, next. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of cool that you can just look around and be like, oh, that looks challenging, and just climb on it versus, if it only had maybe V3 on it, I would just be like, oh, that looks fucked.
Yeah. And it's especially good for the funky, like the World Cup boulders we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Those are the boulders that are fun to session with people and do funny things because everybody has more of a fair chance at.
Yeah, and you can get creative and It could just be fun and silly on those
Definitely.
boulders. Yeah, that's cool. I like that idea. So tell me a little bit about your kind of setting background. How did you get into it, and how'd it come about?
Yeah, so I started setting. I went to University of Georgia, 2005
For route setting?
Major in route setting, a minor in sandbagging, or I don't know, something, in reach. No, I went to school for forestry, and I remember getting sucked into the climbing gym. I followed a girl to the climbing wall, and she never went back, but I never left. Yeah. And
You went there every day hoping she'd show back up?
I remember my friends coming in that I had met, rolling in and like flashing their belay certification card. They're like, "We're belay certified." And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I want it. And yeah, I went down there, and this small little bouldering wall, some of the best times of my life. And college buzz, just learning how to rock climb.
Yeah.
And started just messing around with route setting there, nothing serious. And then Active Climbing was the first climbing gym in Athens, Georgia, and kind of helped that get going as far as setting goes a little bit. But it wasn't until I graduated and moved back to Atlanta in 2010, Stone Summit, the first Stone Summit Atlanta location opened up, which at that time was maybe the biggest gym in the country.
Yeah, I think so.
And I was one of the first route setters there. And I was route setting part-time, working the desk part-time, coaching kids part-time, and mostly trying to figure out what the heck I wanted to do in my life. Lots of pressure from my parents to...
We're all still trying to figure that out.
Yeah. My brother was like a blooming attorney in Atlanta, and like going through law school, getting married. And my parents are like, "What are you? You're obsessed with this rock climbing thing, son. You need to get it together." I'm like, yeah, I just don't know.
That girl's not coming back to the gym, son.
Precisely.
Move on.
So I was in Atlanta for a while, and mostly there just because I was really amped on rock climbing. And a few years ago, I started to kind of pursue some USA climbing certifications and traveling to set a little bit. And I realized, dang, I'm really psyched on this, and kind of breaking out of this bubble that I was in Atlanta.
Yep.
Kind of put a light bulb off in my head and got amped. And before I know it, I moved to Nashville to take a head setting gig for 2 gyms, and now I'm here setting in St. Louis and traveling and trying to do all I can to connect with people and do cool stuff.
Yeah. How often do you travel to set?
For the last few years, it wasn't hardly at all, but last year I left for probably 3 or 4 weeks to travel. A couple weeks ago, I set for Sport Open Nationals in Denver. I'm here this week in St. Louis.
For the So Ill Showdown.
For the So Ill Showdown.
Yeah.
I'm going to judge the Setter Showdown, next Setter Showdown coming up in Orlando.
And you've won a Setters Showdown, right?
Yeah, I won the last Setter Showdown I participated in.
Is that in Austin?
Austin, yep, exactly.
You also won in Lexington, right?
I actually won many categories in Lexington, but I got second overall.
Gotcha.
I cheated a little bit. I used a hold I wasn't given, so I got docked some points. I was like, whatever, this is going to be rad. I'm going to do it anyways. Cost me the victory, but that's cool. So I'm going to be judging another one of those events coming up in Destin, and maybe I'll go set a divisionals level youth event with John Ungst, perhaps up north.
Cool.
And I will be going to collegiate nationals in San Diego late next month. So
nice.
Increasingly, I'm traveling more and more, which is awesome and motivating and a very learning experience. But some sleep would be nice.
Is it hard on your rock climbing?
Yeah, so I was talking to some guys at breakfast this morning about that, actually. Spring's kind of not the rock climbing season for me anymore.
Yeah.
It's
comp season.
Yeah, it gets put on the back burner a little bit. When I was in Denver a couple weeks ago, we set 8 total routes for the comp, and I foreran like 5 of them, bolt to bolt, basically.
Yep.
That's not conducive for fitness or psych or anything, And now I'm here, and I have no skin left after the last couple of days of foreigning, so kind of focus on other things that motivate me a little bit, which is good to take breaks. I've been climbing for 12 years now, so the hiatus is okay.
Yeah. Let's dig into that a little bit, because I get a fair amount of questions from setters who are like, I really want to train. I really want to progress, but setting takes such a toll on my body that I really can't get any high quality training in without hurting myself.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, let's talk about it. Do you have any general thoughts on that? And do you have, a schedule you live by roughly? You have to keep up with your girlfriend who's stronger than you. So
yeah, for sure. That's the only reason I'm still in the game, really, fighting for my life. It goes back and forth. I would say the most limiting factor in training as a route setter would be skin, for sure.
From all the forerunning?
Yeah, absolutely. Setting, forerunning, setting as a full-time route setter especially.
Mm-hmm.
You're just in a perpetual state of thin skin, even on the weekends when you're climbing. Sometimes you might be 10, 20, 30 days on without much rest, and you try you're like, oh cool, my rest day today I'm going to climb like a few 510s, but still you never get fully recovered.
It's like climbing 510s, jugging a rope, hauling up a bucket, touching holds. Like, yeah.
I try and when people are asking what route setting is like, I'm like, it's kind of like painting a picture or doing some art, but the whole time you're doing crunches as well, like CrossFit, and then you're doing the sweet painting that someone's making you do, and you're getting wrecked, and somebody's going to judge you on it and tell you that it sucks. You're like, oh cool, thanks for that. So skin is limiting. Of course, being on a rope or up and down ladders all day is limiting. I found that for me, the most important thing in staying psyched is having a goal in mind.
A route setting goal or an outdoor climbing goal?
Outdoor climbing goal.
Okay.
For instance, I turned 30 last year, and I think I'm in an early midlife crisis for many reasons.
Yeah, I went through one right around 30, I think.
Yeah.
It lasted like 45 minutes or an hour, but I'm fairly sure it was a midlife crisis.
And anybody older than me is like scoffing for saying this for sure. But I saw 30, like age 30 on paper for the first time. And I was like, oh, it doesn't help when you got all these strong young kids like running around doing everything easily. You know?
Yeah.
But so I came to this realization that I have these life list goals, whether it's traveling places or doing certain routes.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, what am I doing to achieve these things? So the first on the list was Routesetting in France last summer.
Mm-hmm.
And
which the most amazing photo in the history of rock climbing came from, by the way.
That keeps coming up, and I'm actually really surprised at how well circulated that photo's become. That was on my 30th birthday, actually.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. So my girlfriend, Kim, for nobody's that's seen this picture, tossed a baguette across the void.
Wait, really?
Yeah, she like wrapped over the edge. I had tied this baguette onto a piece of accessory cord and clipped it to her harness. And I was hanging there on the bowl right before the crux, and she tosses it to me, and I caught it. And she's like basically crying the whole time because she's hanging way up above the Verdun Gorge, and she snapped this picture with her iPhone. So anyways, cool picture. I
think I might need that photo for the cover of this.
You got it. Use it all you want.
Oh man, that makes it so much better. I totally thought you like climbed with like a second chalk bag, like a baguette chalk bag or something.
Baguette bag.
Or in my mouth would have been good too.
That would have.
Yeah. So that I went over there in September, and that basically kept me psyched through all last summer. And coming back, I haven't really. The next thing on the mind is. There's not much, and it's actually been a little bit since then. Haven't been training as much, been working like I was saying.
Yep.
But whenever there's something outside to keep me motivated, that's what helps the most.
Yeah, and sometimes I think you have to, if you want to progress in your career, and what you're doing, then you have to focus on that for a little while. And I don't think that's a bad thing. We can't all just be one-dimensional rock climbers, so...
Some of us try to be.
Yeah, we try.
Included, but
it sounds great.
Yeah.
But I think in reality, we all need other things to focus on now and then. And, you reached the pinnacle of climbing when you shot that photo.
It's all downhill from
It's all
here,
downhill from there anyway.
Yeah. Sending the route didn't actually matter.
No.
You really could have just left the second you had that photo.
I could maybe get some nice Southern classics in with a piece of fried chicken in my mouth or something. But, I think being a route setter in terms of fitness and motivation is both a blessing and a curse, because while you can't train, you can't rest and recover and then give max effort and repeat that over and over again, it does maintain a certain baseline level of fitness.
Yeah.
And as long as you can ward off injury and stay healthy, then I think that's a really good thing. Yeah, I'm super blessed to be working in a job where I'm healthy and fit and
Yeah, totally.
not sitting behind a desk all day. And I try, I'm very aware that everybody on my route setting crew is psyched on climbing and they're psyched on setting, and the smallest injury can set, our whole lifestyle back, career, hobby, everything. So
How do you mitigate that? Is there...
well, it's easier for myself because I'm in charge, right? But I try and be fair for everybody. Yeah, sure.
Like, my elbow hurts a little bit.
Hopefully
You guys do this.
Setting crew doesn't listen too much to this. No. But I definitely try and keep lines of communication very open with my setting crew and myself, and listen to them. And I'm creating the schedule every week and give them easier days when they need it, harder days when I think they can handle it, days off when they're psyched to go climbing.
Yeah.
Because I've seen so many climbers, so many route setters burn out
Sure.
in the biz that I've been fortunate somehow to stay psyched for several years of route setting, and I want the same for these guys, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think for them and protecting them in that way, sometimes I kind of throw myself in a little bit more and I pick up some of slack and the forerunning and the extra leg work.
Yep. I think that's what a leader does in all situations.
Yeah,
if they're a good leader.
Well, this can be difficult when you don't feel like climbing, but neither does anybody else. So sometimes you take one for the team.
Yep.
It's hard, but also they're like 22, so they can handle it.
Your elbows will heal.
Yeah,
You just take it.
yeah. We just keep the gym stock of ibuprofen like full.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's actually in your setting bucket. You've got all your sizes of bolts and then just ibuprofen.
For sure. Actually, that is pretty instrumental in climbing for route setting. And I don't condone this activity at all, but I never take meds for injury. I don't think that's a great idea, but I take it pretty consistently for skin.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I know plenty of guys who do.
Skin pain.
Just so I can keep hangboarding or campusing or do whatever I need to do and not want to cry.
Sure. Yeah.
But in training for route setting, days before work, if you're motivated, getting in early goes a long way for even a campus sesh or a hangboard sesh.
Yep.
But it's not worth the risk if you got a big route setting week and injuries on the table,
Yeah, for sure.
I have no answers for you, Chris.
No, I think you
Just
did
do the best
answer,
I can.
actually. That's good advice. I think what you're saying is be aware of, what's going on with your body, and if you need easier days, try to take easier days, and instead of just pushing hard all the damn time, which is what a lot of us tend to do.
Exactly. For years, I remember being a psyched younger rock climber, and I remember hearing this Sharma quote. So he said something like, "I never climbed a day in my life when it wasn't fun," or something like that.
Yeah.
If I'm not having fun, I'm not doing it.
Yep.
I'm not going to climb or train that day or anything. And I was like, no, screw that. I'm in it. Like, this is how you do it. But I don't know. I guess the older or more mature I get, I realize it's really important, because if we don't listen to our bodies, then we're not going to be doing this for a long time. And that's why I do this sport, because I can do it for the rest of my life. And as somebody whose career is route setting, is even more important, because then your hobby and your job is kind of on the line. Two passions rolled up into one big ball of injury.
Ibuprofen and tendinitis.
One big ball of ibuprofen. Yeah, and that's what we're all looking for, is to kind of roll our passions up into our one life, and make it all work together. So I think that's cool, and I think that's good advice. Do you set for yourself?
It depends. That kind of goes back to that question about training and what I'm psyched on. If I'm motivated and I have some sort of objective in mind, then yeah, I'll set some stuff, either whether it's boulders that I know will be good for 4x4s or routes for endurance or specific moves I want to simulate. Yes, but that's also tricky, because it's my job to set for everybody else.
Sure.
You know, so.
Well, I know a lot of our listeners have home walls, and I've set for myself and my friends before, and I think it's really, really difficult. One of the things that everyone bumps up against is trying to set just above your limit, but not have it feel completely impossible or ridiculous, and I think that's a really tough place to get to. You have any thoughts or ideas on how to do that?
Ooh, on how? That's tough.
I know this is a nebulous, kind of obtuse idea,
I'll
but
do my best.
Yeah.
I can share a story. This is not answering your question really at all, but
Better be a good story then.
But maybe not. We'll see. When I was at Movement Denver setting for Sport Open a couple weeks ago, it was funny because the gym was open while we were setting these routes. So you'd hear the Movement customers kind of just talking, the peanut gallery over on the sideline. They're definitely not going to ask you. You're like 2 feet away. They're not going to ask you what's going on, but they're just going to go ahead and make their assumptions. But every once in a while you will engage them. And the question is always, well, first of all, they think the routes are all like 511, 512, right? And they're like 14 minus routes.
Sure.
Then they say, well, how do you set routes that you can't climb? And we're like, well, actually, some of us here on the route setting crew are actually very good rock climbers and we can climb them. And then they're like, well, why aren't you competing? Like, what? They can't process. There's not this disconnect between route. There is this disconnect between route setting and route climbing that they just can't.
Yep.
They don't know how we could set for the best climbers in the world.
Yeah.
Like
the route setters have never actually climbed. They don't know what they're talking about. Yeah.
So I get that question a lot, actually. How do you set climbs above your limit? And that's one of the indications of being a good route setter, I think, is your ability to do that consistently and accurately.
Mm-hmm. Like,
I think anybody here or anybody listening could put a rock climb on the wall that is really hard. Sure. That's not the goal, right?
Right.
It's accomplishing something with that. It's either hitting a grade or doing it in a style, or at a big comp, it's separating a field of climbers that climb over a number harder than you based on individual moves, right?
Right.
So that's something that I try and teach my route setters for sure. And the only way to do that is for them is to practice that. So while sometimes it might be more legwork for me, tweaking maybe a V9 boulder that a V6 or 7 climber has set, it's really important, and I see them improving drastically. They're doing a great job. So whereas before, if they're climbing V6 and I ask them to set a V8, it could be who knows where, on the scale, and it could be of any quality, but now they're pretty good at it. And
what's the process you go through when you're tweaking? Are you talking to them about it? And
yeah, for sure. So this all depends on the schedule of the day, and if we have time, I love to go through every move with them, basically, or the whole process, right? Step number 1 is try and understand what they're thinking, what they're trying to accomplish with the boulder problem or the route. What do you want to do here? And then it's basically just one move at a time from the start, making one move at a time work, make sure it's not cheatable, make sure it hits the grade. And most of that is, I don't know how much of that gets through to them, but once they start climbing on it, and once they start climbing on difficult climbs that other strong climbers have set, that's when they learn a lot. They start to be able to hold body positions and understand what's possible, or not do moves but understand how it could be done. And
right,
that would be my recommendation for, if possible, anybody with home walls, is to find a strong buddy,
Yeah, I think
in practice,
I think that's huge
for sure. But also, how many times have any of us been on a rock climb and been unable to do moves initially,
right,
and then eventually done the climb?
Yep.
Right. So it's very easy, even for an experienced route setter such as myself, to go to set a hard climb and immediately try and dumb it down because it feels too hard. But having a little bit of belief that you're going to get stronger, your muscles are going to learn the move, and you'll eventually be able to do it, goes a long way. So you just gotta kind of test the waters and push the boundaries of what you think is possible. Put something on the wall that's harder than you think, that you think is cool, leave it there.
Yeah.
And sometimes the slightest 2-degree turn can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, that's good advice too. I think not putting the holds in the exact orientation you think you should be grabbing them, I think can make a huge difference.
And oftentimes climbers look to hands to correct sequences or make climbs a certain way. I encourage people to look to their feet. Because then they're going to learn more about body position and movement and technique that way for sure. Move the feet around. That goes a long way. Make them different difficulty, good feet, bad feet.
Yeah, I did an interview with Chris Danielson years ago on my blog.
Oh man, don't tell me that.
It was on a blog. It wasn't the podcast. So people actually have to read, which is tough for people these days. But he said something I thought was pretty cool. I had sort of always shied away from sideways traveling problems, but he said that's a really great way to introduce harder foot moves because people don't get to track, and you can keep little tiny feet on when you're traveling sideways on a problem, which I think is super interesting, super cool idea.
Yeah, totally.
So,
and I think also maybe a setter at a home wall can look at, there's so many climbing videos, even indoor climbing videos online right now.
Oh yeah.
Mimic stuff, like try and recreate stuff that you've seen. And
you can even try to recreate outdoor problems.
Oh, absolutely.
I've seen that quite a bit. One of my favorite indoor problems was an attempt at a recreation of black lung on the wall in the gym. And one of my favorite indoor problems I've ever climbed on. It was amazing.
That can be tricky.
Yeah.
Simulators.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I found that it's easy for me. I think some routesetters are really great at creating simulators. It's easiest for me to be inspired by outdoor rock climbs than to try and recreate them, because inevitably I'm trying to recreate something beautiful and natural with some pink plastic holds.
Well, the reason it worked for me is because I wasn't comparing it to the real black lung. Like, I've never even seen the real black lung, so that he put it up as a simulator or inspired by it, then I just got to climb on it without the comparison. So
nice.
That was kind of nice.
That's funny because I experience the white lung every day of my life. Is that at all related?
I think it is. That's the gym version of black lung.
So I've set for a bunch of different gyms and with a bunch of different crews, and I feel like every single place I go to, there's a different interaction between setters. How do you feel like you cultivate like teamwork with setting? Because I feel like that's something that I've noticed some crews I've set with, and it's like, man, this is amazing. Like, everyone's just working together, and you go sometimes and it's just every single person does their own thing, and it's just a little bit hectic. It can be all over the place. But so for other people who either run a setting crew or they work with setting crew, or like they are setters, like, what do you think has helped the most to have a good cohesive group?
That's a good question. Excuse me. For me, I think a lot of it takes place during the setting day. We put a lot of emphasis in the forwarding process. Like, that's almost half of our day doing that. Whereas,
and you're all forerunning together?
All forwarding together. And assuming we haven't set a really large quantity of boulders or routes, I make sure I'm climbing on all of them. Everybody else is climbing on everybody's. And I try my hardest to keep feedback open and positive and constructive, and accepted as well. I think that I have the most experience of anybody on my setting crew, so I'm giving a lot of feedback.
Sure.
But it's also important that I receive that well. And that can be hard to facilitate, right?
Yeah.
Not only coming from somebody who doesn't have as much experience, giving somebody with experience feedback, but also giving your boss feedback can be touchy.
Yeah. You have to cultivate the openness there. Make them able to talk to you that way.
Absolutely. And I think step one is criticizing your own boulders sometimes, or tweaking them, being willing to change them, and showing that if one of my setters has a suggestion, maybe I agree, maybe I don't, but I view everybody's suggestions as valid. And sometimes I make that change, because they think that's going to be a good idea. Now, yesterday, actually, one of the setters on the crew at the showdown was asking about my experience and how I got to where I was. And I certainly don't think I've arrived anywhere by any means. I should say that for sure.
Okay.
But he said, man, of other setters at your level, I've seen set and I've worked with, I I'm not sure what he said, but he said something about me calling my own boulder shitty. He's like, I haven't seen anybody do that before. I said this boulder, I was like, man, that boulder looks like a turd. But he's like, I just really appreciated that, you know, it like kind of made it feel like this is all down to earth.
Yeah, you're
like,
able to be critical of your own work. And
yeah, for sure. And I think being critical of your own work is important.
Yeah.
So fostering teamwork in a forwarding process is really important. I know that many gyms take group outings. You know, I try and, you know, get everybody out to dinner every once in a while, or go climbing together every once in a while, and extend that relationship beyond just the work environment, but into the other passion that we all share, which is outdoor rock climbing. I think that relationships and teamwork can quickly deteriorate if you're not managing properly and effectively, and you're being too harsh or overbearing. And I try and keep things light, and that has its drawbacks as well. You know, like I don't run the tightest ship ever. But I like to think that I run a fun ship. Like a party ship of some kind.
Relatively light party ship.
And you know, I think that while we might not have the most organized setter closet or the most structured program, we do some really quality work, and we're all happy to be there, and I think we'll be doing it for a long time.
Nice.
Now, if you do a podcast with one of my setters, hopefully they say the same thing.
I'm going to get all their feedback before I put this out.
You should. That'll be
so that we can decide whether you're actually a good boss or not.
Little sound bites in there. Jonathan sucks.
And it sounds too like you're almost approaching it less like a manager's standpoint, more kind of like a mentorship.
You know, I was really fortunate when I moved from Atlanta to Nashville. I could have assumed a head setter position or even a route setter position at another gym, and that could have been met with experienced setters. It was hard for me to fit in, or maybe they would have a harder time respecting any authority that I might give. But my crew was eager to learn, and they were younger route setters, and I'm so fortunate to have been handed it that way, right? And I also work for a gym whose management allows me to kind of run things as I see fit and how I see best. So I'm in a great situation in Nashville. I came from Atlanta, where for years I sat with a bunch of V14 rock climbers. You know, if I had moved to Nashville and I tried to tell them what to do, that would have been a little bit different. So I think they have a lot to learn, and they're coming up, and they're doing a great job. And as much as it's a learning process for them, it really benefits me to learn how to teach people. And you know?
And it's cool that you, as the boss, go into it as a learning situation for you too. You know, I think that's really important.
You know, when I was trying to decide if I should move to Nashville or not, I talked with somebody to seek his advice about, you know, if I should make this move or not. And he's like, man, if you want to be a head setter, whether it's in Nashville or some larger gym somewhere else, it's important that you take this step, because you're going to learn all the things you got to do right, and you got to learn all the things you're going to do wrong too. You know, mistakes are a big part of the process, and I've made plenty of them, right? Whether it's getting a little hot-headed because I'm really tired and my skin hurts and I just forehand this boulder and I didn't like it very much, or, you know, who knows what, all kinds of things. So I learn every day, and just like they do. And I hope they see it as this collective effort we're all trying to improve upon. And we can only hope for the best, man.
You know, something I really appreciate is the amount of feedback that you talk about, you know, giving it and accepting it and making it just an integral part of the process. Because one of the things I saw at the showdown in Lexington, the setter showdown, was that I saw and I was impressed with was after the showdown, Louis Anderson said, you know, we can go one by one through your problems and critique your work if you want to do it. You know, if you setters want to stay afterward, talk to me. We can go one by one. And so many people stayed. When he was first saying that, I was like, nobody's going to do this. Everybody is out of here, you know. But all kinds of people stayed, and I was really, really impressed by that. So I think it's a huge part of the learning process.
Well, I think, anybody that's passionate about route setting, and especially the kind of route setters that Setter Showdown would draw, like they're motivated. and they want to see improvement. They want to network. They've traveled there. You got to be receptive to feedback. It's the second you stop being receptive to feedback, or you see yourself as too good to receive it, or maybe you think, oh man, I got all the tools I need. You're not evolving as a setter, and that's the same kind of ego in route setting that you see in rock climbing that nobody likes being around.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any instances talking about learning and being open to that kind of feedback? Have you ever watched, a Daniel Woods or someone like that on one of your problems, and something happens that you totally didn't expect, or that you feel like, I might have failed at this?
For sure.
And then how do you move from that? What do you learn from those situations?
I set when I was setting for nationals a couple weeks ago and open nationals last year, between the qualifiers, semifinals, and finals rounds, there's always, you hope for the best, but it's almost like gambling in a way. You're like, I don't know these people personally. I see them climb once a year. They climb a lot harder than me. I'm taking these risks. We got a lawnmower over there.
Yeah, we might have to take a little break here. How about we move this inside and continue the conversation there?
Sounds good to me.
Cool with you?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break. What's up, everybody? Chris here. Pardon the interruption. I'll keep this short and sweet. Since this podcast started taking off and we've been growing it, you guys have been asking how you can help out. I've got 3 ways for you. Number 1, you can become a patron. That just means you give a monthly donation to the podcast, $1 and up, and you get something in return. And you can check out what those rewards are at patreon.com/Power Company Podcast. Best of all, we'll keep it sponsor and commercial free for you. Number 2, you can rate us and review us on iTunes. I know it's a pain in the ass to go to iTunes and do all that, but it really helps us out. At least that's what I'm told by the podcast powers that be. And number 3, perhaps the easiest way and the best way to help us out is to share us on your social medias. Anytime you see us post up a new podcast, please share it with your friends. Tag people who will really appreciate it or who need to hear the advice that we're giving. All right, thank you guys, and back to the show. Okay, we have returned. The lawnmower forced us inside, and now we're in Jonathan's natural habitat anyway, so he's going to get more comfortable now. But so we were talking about Daniel Woods or whomever crushing the shit out of your problems and you having to learn from that. So,
actually, I feel like most of my experiences have been with making the climbs too difficult than too easy.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that going into setting for elite level climbers like that, I know that they're going to tear it up, right?
Right.
So the last thing I want to do is just see everybody just take down my boulder or my route.
Right.
And not get, from a competitive standpoint, not get any of the results that we want.
Yep.
So if anything ever happens, they end up being too difficult. For this last nationals, I was assigned I was primarily working on the women's routes, which for me, I was really, really excited about. And there's equally strong guys and gals competing. But when setting for the women, I feel like there's so much more to think about. You have sizes, reach, greater discrepancies in styles, a wider range of abilities in the field, perhaps. So I really like the challenge that presented, and things like, oh man, this section of the climb ended up being way too heady into a section that was way too difficult. I know they're all capable of doing it, but it was just too much for them right now. Or that move was too powerful that late in the climb. Things like that.
Right.
You start to log little bits of information on, okay, I'll use that bit in the future, I'll use that then. But what I've learned is almost every time something goes not exactly according to plan, I kind of knew it in my gut going into it. Maybe I pushed it back down or didn't acknowledge it, but you kind of listen to your instincts in a way, and you can easily get sucked into, oh, this is going to be cool, it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right.
Right.
Or this looks rad, it's going to be sweet. It's not a big deal. They'll do it.
Move.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what you got to be careful of as a route setter, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I think
of
so.
course, you learn something every time somebody does or doesn't do your climb. And it doesn't have to be Daniel Woods. It can be this
It could
dude
be
or in the
whoever.
gym climbing a V6 that
Yeah.
you thought was hard. You know, the other day I was setting this climb in a corner with my buddy or one of my route setters, and it was this weird mantle boulder. It took us an hour to do, but we
Yeah.
were really psyched on it. We eventually both did it, and in our little grade guide, we put V2 on it as a joke.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, we opened up the section of wall, and like 3 guys just bam, 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 first try, each of them. You know, so it doesn't have to be Daniel Woods to teach you something about your route setting.
Yeah, totally. You just mentioned that you were, doing the women's routes. Do you take your experience with Kim, watching Kim climb or climbing with Kim, into that at all?
I can't drag her too much into this. I'm sure she'll listen. No, I don't actually. She is an exceptional climber outdoors,
Yeah.
and she's a very great climber indoors, but she is not of the competition mindset at all.
Gotcha.
Certainly she shares in some of the same styles as some of the other women that are climbing, but she's not a prolific on-site climber.
Mm-hmm.
She's not great at comp style moves, jumping around, things like that. So not too much.
Yeah, I think more what I was asking was like, I know that you and I talked really briefly yesterday about coaching your significant other and the challenges of that, which are many.
There are blessings too, Kim.
And so what I'm, like watching Kim climb or any other girl climb for that matter, and learning the spatial relationship between holds, and for some guys, I've seen this happen so many times where a guy's like, oh, you just go from here to here, and he's telling the beta to some 4'11" girl, and she's like, you cannot give me beta anymore.
Sure.
It doesn't work that way. But I think as coaches, Nate and I have gotten better at it, and I imagine as a setter and as a coach yourself that you absorb that and can see the relationship, the distance relationship between holds better because you've watched all these people.
No doubt. Absolutely. The more time I spend watching women or men, the more I learn about their size, their ability, their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
For sure. And I totally, like our men's and women's routes a couple weeks ago were set completely differently because we had different genders in mind, and while I'm sure that some of the women could have done the men's routes and vice versa, that's not so universal across the field.
Right.
Of course, you have 5, 15, 14 plus climbers like Margot and Ashima who can take down a lot of hard stuff in a lot of different styles, but they're like the sub 1% of that field.
Sure.
And I think that's where you'd run into issues with separating people, what might be a stopper move for women, for like guys who are just used to like more powerful moves or just being large, like being taller.
Totally.
Like, wouldn't be as low of a percentage move.
But it also, the same discussion we're having about women right now applies to men.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Look at Kai.
Yeah.
His wingspan is enormous.
Yeah.
And he's got
so
huge
crazy
hands.
flexible.
And he's
52.
flexible. So it's like, oh, well, I can just put this bunchy move here that'll be challenging for Kai. Well, he just gets his foot above his hand and it's not an issue.
Yep.
So there's certainly things to think about in all categories. And that's what's fun about what we're doing, is you put the stuff on the wall and you use all your experience and your knowledge to do it, and you cross your fingers and you just sit back and watch. And sometimes it doesn't go as according to plan, but sometimes it pays off and you nail it, and it's so rewarding.
Yeah, cool. This is something I used to, in response to all those people who are like, it's just too reachy, which I think happens a lot. And this is something I used to preach quite a bit, and I'm just curious to get your opinion on it. We had a setter at our gym named Corey. I don't know if you've ever met Corey. Super tall, good setter. And he would often set in the harder grades, once he got to where his grades were difficult for him, he would set really reachy moves.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of people would complain, that the moves are just too reachy. And for me, I'm like, this is a great opportunity.
Sure.
Because I get to practice these big, giant moves that I'm not good at. And that happens outside,
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't always set that way, but I found it to be a opportunity for me.
Sure. I'd say in outdoor climbing, I maintain this philosophy, less so as a head route setter, because I don't think it's a safe thing to do. But I remember reading this Alex Megos quote one time, and he said something along the lines of, there's no dry, too humid, too crimpy, too tired, too reachy. There's only too weak. Yep. Right. And I can't, if I ever said that to a customer coming up to me being like, that move's too long, I'm like, no, you're just weak. I'm not doing my job very well. Right.
Yeah.
And it's totally challenging. The three, myself included, the 3 full-time guys on our setting crew are all over 6 feet. So it's a constant struggle for all of us to set with the vertically challenged in mind.
Right.
Like,
the normal.
Always working on it. And no matter how much we work on it and we think we nail it, we see a short person that's still just maxed out, right?
Yeah, totally.
So you'd love for everyone to have this mindset that is the challenge. And, I spent 5 years climbing and setting with Brad Weaver in Atlanta.
Right.
And he's short and has a negative ape index.
Right.
And I'm not lying to you. I've never seen a move set in there that he wasn't able to do or span or figure out some way to do it. And that's even when we were setting with Brian Voges, who was a monster.
Yeah.
He's giant, right?
Yeah.
So for sure, I'd love, just as I say, take the grades as a guide, I'd love to be like, take it as a challenge. But in the commercial setting, it's not all about even progressing. It's about recreating. And
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
people want to find success, and your business needs to be successful. And for that to happen, people need to feel accomplished when they walk in and have some reason to come back. And if they're just constantly getting shut down or not to the top of a route or a boulder problem, then we're not doing a good job. It's like making a bunch of clothes for a retail shop that are all too small or too big.
Right.
You're not going to sell them, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good note for our listeners to keep in mind when they're in the gym and they're cursing the setters. It's not all about you. It's about running the business and keeping the customers happy, and you're the only one customer.
Sure.
So.
And I think you have different gyms. Some gyms, clientele, you hear most of the feedback from rock climbers.
Right.
And they're like, oh, this is too easy or too basic or too this or too that. Other gyms, it's more, entry level climbers. It's more of a commercial setting, and they think, oh, this is too hard or not fun, things like that, because it's more you're setting real rock climbs, and it's a balance. You just got to listen to who you're serving and do the best you can.
Yeah, and everyone climbs for different reasons too. Some people, they may just want to go to a climbing gym because they just got off work and they want to get rid of some stress. They don't want to sit and have to deal with some shenanigan challenge. Like, they just want to go.
I don't want to
like
be
a World Cup
today.
boulder at 40 feet on a route.
Exactly. Like, not trying to deck into a volume like halfway up a route. It's like, I just want to go in and have fun.
Yep.
So it totally makes sense to, you cater to all those people if that's who your clientele is.
Sure.
Yep. I have a question for you. So a lot like we were talking about with the height challenge or the distance between holds challenge. Whenever I'm in the gym with a bunch of people, and everybody's like, "Oh, that problem's just awkward. It's stupid." My response is always, or maybe you just lack the requisite skill to make it not awkward.
Sure.
And I try to apply that to myself as well. How often do you purposely, or do you ever purposely make, put the footholds in the wrong place, quote unquote, to make a problem awkward? Because it happens outside. So,
I feel like I'm going to get lured into a trap here.
It's a trap.
I would say I do it but I don't think of it as putting it in the wrong place.
Sure.
Right?
And that's why.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. It's like the more I route set and the more I climb, the more it becomes a challenge. You know, you want everything. Sure, it'd be nice if everything was really comfortable and the feet were where you wanted it, but
Yeah.
is that making you a better rock climber? Probably not as much. As I've been route setting since like 2006 or 7. I don't know how many boulders I've set, you know, and there's plenty of setters that have set a lot more than me, but it's a lot.
Right.
And you get in ruts in setting, just like you get in ruts in climbing. And one of the ways I try and kind of get out of that rut or break the mold of what I typically do is I'll go to set a move and I'll look to what I normally do. Maybe I'm going to go to this Gaston and put a foot over here to oppose it. And I'm just going to put that foot in a different spot than what I would go to immediately.
Yep.
And see what works. I'm not going to say I'm going to put it in a different spot and that's going to be the boulder, but I'm going to see where that leads me. Right.
Sure.
So I'm gonna do something funky, and maybe it goes, maybe it doesn't, and hopefully it'll inspire something new, or it'll unlock a door that I didn't. Sounds cheesy. Didn't have a key to in the first place. I just led myself right down there. I don't know. I wish I could take that one
Jonathan
back.
was reading that out of a notepad, by the way. He's been working on that.
I'm way more philosophical than I thought. I need to get in front of a mic more often.
Yeah, I think that's good advice too. Just, sort of cross off your first instinct and see if any other thing can work and what comes from it.
And I would encourage climbers in gyms to be aware that, route setters are testing themselves too. And I know a lot of route setters that are exceptional route setters, and they can put up a 4 out of 5 star climb every single time on the wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
For good or bad, I don't know. I've always been more of the route setter that will aim for that 5-star climb, but end up with a 2-star climb on occasion.
Sure.
Right? And I think that to grow as a route setter, you got to try new things, you got to test things out. And hopefully, in the forwarding process, you correct things and you weed those less quality climbs out and you bring them back up to a good average.
Yep.
But there's no way we can develop as route setters and offer customers something new if we're not trying new things. So customers need to understand that and hopefully try new things as well. But it's challenging to get that message across.
Yeah. You got anything else, Nate?
No.
Yeah. I think you've pretty much covered the entire spectrum of, this is the definitive guide right here.
Send it back to Chris Danielson. Don't do that. Sorry, Chris.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And this was great.
Cool. Glad to join this nice afternoon indoors now with you.
All right. Thanks, you guys. It's really interesting for me to hear the perspective from the route setter's point of view, especially trying to satisfy your own needs and the needs of a commercial gym, and also running this route setting crew that Jonathan runs. I think it's really important, I believe, that to take that learning, always a student point of view that Jonathan seems to really hold on to, and he obviously is doing a good job with it. So, I think we can all take quite a few lessons from this, whether it's how we approach going into the commercial gym and how we look at the problems and how we decide whether or not to blame the setters, like a lot of us do, or whether you're setting in your own space, which I'm actually taking a break from setting on my own Woody right now. The initial set, which will probably be the only set that ever happens on it, and in the machine shop here in Lander, so come and visit. And I'm going to take a lot of the lessons that we talked about into our set today, and definitely when I visit all the commercial gyms around the country that we go to. So I appreciate the route setters. I appreciate what you guys are doing. Again, if you're looking for a job as a route setter, hit up Jonathan. He's going to be hiring. That's Jonathan at climbnashville.com. They've got 2 gyms opening in the next year. And definitely check out the Hotter Than Chicken bouldering competition. Again, I'll have links to Jonathan's email and to videos from the Hotter Than Chicken comp in the show notes and on the blog. So go check those out. Episode 71 is going to be 2-year anniversary in just a couple of days. We're going to be talking about goals, Nate and I, in a board meeting. So I will see you guys then. And you should be seeing me quite a bit because I've been posting like crazy on the machine shop that's going on the Instagrams. So if you are not following over there, you should be. You should be following us on the Facebook. We just went over 3,000 followers on there recently. We're looking for more this year, so go follow us on there. We're going to be doing some cool things on Facebook. And if you're a Pinterester, is that even a thing, a Pinterester? Then follow us on there. You can look for us on the Twitters, but we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
It's time to build.